request was to completely defund the program. And we knew we were going to lose on that. Now we're asking for a delay, which, again, I don't think is an unreasonable thing to do. You know, your boss, Tip O'Neill, shut down the government 12 different times, and you didn't call him a terrorist.
No,
you did not call him. So you didn't call him.
These were always issues of a couple of days, and they were always resolved. And they were over numbers, and it was both sides. So let's be fair, both sides were doing it.
But it happened. But you said once.
Where'd you get your number from?
It's from the Washington Post.
No, 7 times. So you're counting all the times since the 70s. Look, they were always.
No, there were
cases.
17 times since the 70s, and 12 under your boss.
Okay,
so.
And Congressman Labrador is absolutely right, and kudos to him for making a fool out of Chris Matthews and the whole leftist media. Joining us right now is our friend from the Wall Street Journal, Stephen Moore. Hey, Steve, how are you?
Hey, Steve, great to be with you. That's a great soundbite. You know, I had even forgotten about that, but, you know, these things have happened so many times in the last 25 years, and you know, when Democrats do it, they're custodians of good policy, and when Republicans try to force their will, they're terrorists.
Right. Republicans, if you look back, and the Washington Post, Dylan Matthews had this out on September 25th, 17 times since 1976. Usually, nine times out of 10, it's Democrats controlling the House and the Senate, even when Carter was president. And these are government shutdowns, and now it's like the world is going to just end.
Yeah, and by the way, those 17 previous times, I mean, the world did not come to an end. It was not the end of days. And, you know, we're hearing this overblown rhetoric right now. Look, I don't want to see the government shut down. I mean, I want to get this thing resolved. But, you know, these are very serious policy disagreements between the president and the Republicans who were elected to have the majority in the Congress. And, you know, the president is basically saying he's not going to negotiate. Harry Reid saying he's not going to negotiate. Well, how do you, Steve, reach a middle ground when one party won't budge an inch?
Yeah, well, that's a very good question, and of course, the Senate has, of course, rejected the CR sent over by the House on Saturday. The Senate, la-di-da, ended their vacation, their long weekend, and came back to work at 2 o'clock Eastern time in time to vote down that continuing resolution. So now
this is an important point, Steve. Why have they waited till 2 o'clock this afternoon? They could have done this on Saturday, right? And the answer is because I believe, we said this in the Wall Street Journal today, the Democrats want the government to shut down because all they care about is politics. They don't care what's good for the country. They care about politics. So they think, and they're probably right, they can blame this on the Republicans. And if that means, you know, a bunch of people you know, don't get paid, and you know, people have to worry about you know, the services they depend on for government. That's a small price to pay to squash the Republicans.
And they think that this is step one in their strategy to take back the House in 2014,
yes,
right?
Exactly right. It's all politics. That's the whole point about this. You know, look, you can agree or disagree with the Republicans that they're standing for this principle. I mean, I think it's an important principle, but you know, honest people can disagree. But to stand for a principle, you know, and then, you know, blame the Republicans for being political here, I believe it's Harry Reid who's being the political one, because now he's basically said, okay, we passed our budget. There's only 8 hours left. You know, what are you going to do? It's becoming very, very difficult to avoid a shutdown rather than, you know, spending the last couple of days negotiating.
Absolutely. We're talking to Stephen Moore, the Wall Street Journal, here on the Steve Malzberg Show. So, you know, you keep hearing these horrific scenarios coming from the media, especially. What will happen, Stephen? I mean, I know that in the continuing resolution, the Republicans have fully funded the military, but the Democrats won't even accept that. So at this point, so what will happen at midnight tonight?
To be as terrible as possible, Steve. I mean, you know, they want this to be like a nuclear reactor going off in the country, because then the Republicans get the blame. Here's what I think is going to happen. I mean, I think that the Republicans are going to pass back to the Senate a budget that basically gives the Democrats what they want, except for the one thing on Obamacare is it gets rid of the egregious congressional exemption that I've heard you talking about, you know, that basically lets Congress and their staffers have a carve-out from the law that it wants to impose on the rest of us. And look, if Democrats reject that, yeah, I mean, what do you do next? I don't know. I mean, these guys, this congressional exemption, the loophole that gives Congress basically a carve-out for Obamacare, 90% of Americans are sickened by that. And the Democrats look like they're going to try to protect that, too.
Absolutely. So how will you and I and the people listening and watching, for the most part, we can't speak to individuals, but federal employees will feel it immediately, but how will anybody else feel it?
Well, look, I mean, there's some things that are going to be very inconvenient. If you need to get a passport or something like that, Steve, you might want to run out and get it today. If you need to use data from the government or something like that, a lot of those agencies are going to be closed down maybe for a day or two. Will it be in the end of the world? Hell no. It'll be inconvenience for some people. But, as I said, these are big, big principles about whether we're going to continue to borrow $1 trillion a year, whether we're going to have what is, in my opinion, the worst law that's passed Congress in 30 years. And so, some inconveniences for 48 hours I don't think are so terrible.
So you see this, whatever happens, as a short-term shutdown?
Yeah, I do. And I think Republicans, Obama, have you ever seen anything like this, Steve, with the press treatment of this? I mean, they're treating Republicans like they're criminals, convicts.
And the rhetoric from the Democrats are the same exact words. Terrorists, arsonists, anarchists. I mean, my God, what does it say for Tip O'Neill and Robert Byrd and their cronies?
Right. And so, it's very difficult when you've got 3 against 1. You've got the Senate, the president, and the press against the House Republicans. So,
you think they will eventually acquiesce and save it for the debt ceiling?
I don't know. They may have to, because the president is not negotiating here, and he's basically feeling like he's got an upper hand because he's got the media on his side, and so he wants the Republicans.
But he's negotiating with Iran and with Syria and with Russia.
Well, here's the point. And even if Republicans have to basically accede to the president on this, do not forget, Steve, that we also have in two weeks a debt ceiling fight. And people wonder, why is there such ill will? Why can't these parties get along? Well, it's when the president uses this kind of language, and he treats these people like they're, the scum of the earth.
Yeah, they're messing with me.
That doesn't build comedy.
No, they're messing with me, all this kind of language, which is really unpresidential. One more for you, Steve, and that is tomorrow, no matter what happens, Obamacare officially launches. What does that mean? You talk about it devastating for the economy.
Well, here's where I think Republicans should make the case that, one of the reasons that delaying Obamacare for a year makes sense is the thing isn't ready. Nobody understands the law. The businesses don't understand it. The people don't know how to sign up for it. Everybody's confused by it. Employers don't know what it's going to mean for their employment. We already have the Obama administration admitting that it's not ready, right? That basic things like verifying the incomes of people to make sure they're actually eligible for these subsidies. The IRS isn't ready. The HHS isn't ready. I think the American people are saying, wait, why are we trying to start this jalopy when the wheels aren't on it yet?
Yeah, no, absolutely, and unfortunately, we've reached that point, and we've already seen the economic impact. And one other thing I just wanted to run by you. I know you don't predict the stock market or anything like that, but interesting to see that the market, so far hasn't crashed in anticipation of the shutdown.
Yeah, because they've lived through this 17 times before, right? It's not the end of the world. The press and the president are trying to make this out like it's going to be Armageddon, and people realize that these differences get settled, and so it's not going to cause a stock market crash. And I think the president is really being cynical when he's trying to spook the markets by saying, "Oh my God, we're not going to be able to pay our bills. The full faith of the credit of the United States government is going to be abrogated. If you've got those bonds, you're not going to redeem them." I mean, can you imagine, Steve, if a president of a company said that about his company's bonds?
Yeah, that's the end of that. Absolutely.
Fire the shareholders in 24 hours.
Absolutely. Well, I wish we could fire him in the next 24 hours, but that's not going to happen either. Steve, thank you very, very much, sir, for your time. Always a pleasure.
Thank you, Steve.
Take care. Stephen Moore, ladies and gentlemen, editorial board, Wall Street Journal, saying that the Democrats want the government to shut down. They're playing politics. And I could not agree more. If you're going in saying we're not talking, we're not negotiating, these people are terrorists, they're hostage takers, they're anarchists. I mean, does that breed a climate for agreement? I mean, sit down and talk, meet, and then come out and say we couldn't reach an agreement. Play the game. Make believe. They're not even making believe. They just don't want anything to do with any kind of compromise, any kind of negotiation, any kind of talk. They're saving that for the terrorist leader of Iran and the murderer in Syria. Hey, what can I tell you? All right, what do you think? 855-777-9660. 855-777-9660. I would love to hear what you have to say. Are the Democrats the ones playing politics? Are the Democrats the ones to blame? Or is it the evil Republicans? On the Steve Malzberg Show, Newsmax TV and radio.